Happy Monday to you, Central Georgia. Thanks for tuning in for a look at your extended forecast. The calm and pleasant stretch of weather will roll on for the foreseeable future, but we'll go into all the specifics, help you plan out those backyard barbecues, maybe any outdoor tailgate parties this weekend, and we'll talk about what's in store in terms of maybe some dry conditions. So obviously we like to show you the almanac from yesterday to see how we're faring today as opposed to the day before. So first things first, we'll talk about the numbers, and you'll just want to keep these in mind as we go into the future and go into this afternoon. 87 for a high temperature yesterday, which was only 1 degree shy of our average high temperature of 88 this time of year. It was a pretty chilly morning at 54 degrees yesterday in Macon, so that's about 12 degrees below average this time of year, and only 5 degrees above the record low set back in 2015. We've had some cool mornings with numbers down as low as 52 degrees is what I've seen in a select few areas. Very thankfully, we haven't seen any of those numbers with a 5 in front of them have a 4 in front of them. If you get some 40s in the month of September, it's getting a little bit too cold for your liking. 99, the record high temperature yesterday back in 2018. So both your record low and your record high have happened within the last 11 years. In terms of precipitation, it was another day without rain. Obviously, that's not coming at too much of a surprise. And your year departure of rain continues to go down, but we're still nearly 5.5 inches above where we should be at this point of the year. But it's another day without rain and another day with some warm afternoon temperatures. So what that has resulted in is a very dry month of September, number one. We've only recorded rainfall 2 days during the entire month. That was on the 4th and on the 6th. And both those days, we didn't record much. It was only 1/100th of an inch of rain on the September 4th and 2/100ths of an inch of rain on September 6th. So the total so far has risen to 3/100ths of an inch of rain. We haven't found any rain over the last week or so here in Central Georgia. So we continue to see the numbers go down into the very dry category. Now this is just for the month of September, and this is just at Middle Georgia Regional Airport, but rain has been very hard to come by all across Central Georgia as we've transitioned into this last official month of the summer. And obviously, we're about halfway through the month at this point, so we'll continue to see if maybe we can have a couple days of recorded rainfall that bump us up back close to normal. But on average, September is a pretty dry month in itself. Just over 3 inches of rain on average for the month of September all time. The record came back in 2004, which was a pretty active hurricane season. Hurricanes Ivan and Hurricane Jean both gave us plenty of rain and sent those totals above the 12.5 inch mark. But it is worth noting this record is far shorter than what we've seen over previous months. Flood of 94, we had about 20 inches of rainfall, and the record for August all time was also up there around 20 inches of rain, which we actually got over halfway to. I believe that we got just over 10 inches of rain in the month of August. But then obviously 2004, we are still a long shot away from that. We're still even a long shot away from what we averagely hit in the month of September. So we still need about 3 inches of rain to reach that threshold. So when you have a period of really dry conditions, obviously not getting rain over a week, maybe even a week and a half here in Central Georgia, it can result in some dry conditions, especially with the warm temperatures that we see in the afternoon. So right now, your drought monitor does show plenty of abnormally dry areas all across the southeast. Specifically this one in west central Georgia and getting into northwest central Georgia around the metro Atlanta area. Abnormally dry isn't really anything to be concerned about. It's once you get into these actual drought categories, are you going to really want to take some proper precautions, maybe overwater your plants, make sure that they have hydration not only once, but maybe even a couple of times throughout the day. We can see plenty of these yellow areas creeping close from the south down there just on the line of Crisp County, this other patch right here that is getting close to Telfair County, and then over to the east, spanning back into South Carolina, so really close to the I-16 corridor, areas like Emmanuel County probably have a bit of an abnormally dry atmosphere right now. So these drought monitors, we talk about them all the time. One thing I want to tell you is the data is as of every Tuesday. So obviously you see as of September 9th, that was as of this past Tuesday. But then we get the release of the drought monitor every week, 2 days after that. So we'll get the drought monitors released every Thursday, but it only takes into account the data as of 2 days prior. So that would be the previous Tuesday. We'll get the data kind of accumulated and added up as of tomorrow, and then as we go into Thursday, we'll get the latest drought monitor issued here down in the state of Georgia. And what I would expect is many of these abnormally dry areas to be expanded into central Georgia. And along with that, I think some areas of moderate drought are also going to be possible because we can see them farther over to the west of us. So obviously some areas in the near vicinity are really dry. Central Georgia has been really wet as of the month of August, but when you have a dry period like we've had recently, it obviously isn't going to really do much in terms of alleviating the dry conditions, and the rain chances that we have in the forecast are still looking very minuscule. So that's your main headline: staying dry and mostly sunny for the foreseeable future. Cool mornings and warm days. No widespread rain looks to be in sight, but we do have some maybe slightly more impressive rain chances than what we had at this point during last week. We'll go over all the specifics here very shortly. Here's your quad view on your sky cams. Plenty of blue sky, maybe some thin high clouds out there, but nothing that's blocking any of that sunshine. So we have warmed up pretty accordingly. We started out with a good mix of 50s and low 60s this morning on the temperature map. Every number is above the 70-degree mark now at the 10:30 hour. Taking a look at most areas farther up to the north and the northeast, a little bit warmer, some 75s, some 76s, 77 down in Dublin, also another 77 in Thomaston, 76 in Rochelle, but a good mix of the low 70s, the mid 70s, and then maybe a few areas that are flirting with the upper 70s. So Dublin and Thomaston sitting at 77 degrees. Those are our warmest numbers. How do the rest of the eastern United States fare up against that threshold? Well, 76 over in Montgomery, pretty similar. You continue over to the west, over in Jackson, Mississippi, creeping above the 80-degree mark. 84 in New Orleans, 80 degrees in Orlando, 82 down in Houston. So it looks like 84 takes the cake. Once again, New Orleans running with that warmest temperature in the eastern United States here. Dew point temperatures, they have slightly increased since this morning. We saw a good mix of some 50s and 60s. Those dropped down mainly into the 50s, and then as the temperatures pick back up, we saw the dew point temperatures rise up accordingly as well. We continue to get this northeasterly breeze, so anytime we have a northeasterly breeze, it is going to push some of those drier surface dew points down into our neck of the woods, and that's really what's playing a dominant role in our forecast. Still a good mix of 50s and 60s, but I would say predominantly right there around the 60-degree mark at the very least for your dew point temperatures, which is good enough for a little bit of moisture. But still, you're kind of right between this not bad and dry category here on the legend. It's not playing much of a role in the feels like numbers, and along with that, it's really not enough moisture at the surface in order to sprout some afternoon shower or even storm chances like we would see during a very humid day in the summertime months. You do see this patch of no color over here along the state line of Georgia and Alabama. There's some sensor issues over there, so obviously that's not entirely accurate of what's going on there. I would imagine they're in a very similar atmosphere as we are here in the state, or here in central Georgia. All across the southeast, plenty of light green. It's the farther you go over to the Mississippi River that you actually can find some patchy areas of the dark green, the super swampy air. We haven't seen too many areas of dark green whatsoever as of recently. You also see that on the feels like numbers graphic, this patchy area right over here is still not recording accurate feels like numbers. These colors, they're reminiscent of feels like numbers probably down in the 30s and the 20s. That's definitely not the case. It's September, folks. Obviously, that would be a lot more believable if it was the month of December, maybe even January. But focusing on our feels like numbers, somewhere in the 70s for Sept at the warmest, I believe at 81 degrees. Just depending on your moisture content, you could see some numbers that are slightly inflated, but overall your temperatures are feeling a lot like what they actually read on the temperature map. The winds and the wind gusts, not too breezy as of right now, but they could be a little bit breezy over the next few hours. Some shades of blue building in, maybe a steady breeze of 5 to even 9 miles per hour like you see in Cochrane right there. But you do see plenty of calm icons, so that blue shade should be a little bit more widespread as we go throughout the next couple of hours. And along with that, hour by hour, we'll see the numbers climb out of the 70s and reach the 80s by the time we get into around lunchtime in the noon hour. And then we'll continue to climb very steadily, somewhere in the low 80s, eventually into the mid 80s as we get into this warmest afternoon portion, 3, 4, and 5 p.m. Topping out at 84 is what our meteogram has, but I do believe we'll climb slightly higher than that. I have a high temperature forecasted of 85 degrees today. some partly cloudy skies. So if you do catch some cloud cover, you'll get some occasional shade, maybe not quite feeling as warm. But this 85 is going to feel very comfortable this afternoon, even if it is on the warmer side. That's been the case the last couple of days. When you pair it up with that drier air, it still feels more like a fall heat as opposed to what we'd see in the summertime months. A possible sprinkle this afternoon. We'll go over why that is and where the rain chances are a lot greater. And a northeasterly breeze, mainly steady about 5 to 10 miles per hour, but an occasional gust up to 20 miles per hour could be seen mainly in the early afternoon time frame. Some of that could linger into the late afternoon, but by the time we transition into the evening and nighttime, I do believe that conditions are going to be a lot better, going to be a little bit less breezy in nature. So your heat indices today should be pretty accurate of what your actual temperatures are, somewhere around 84, 85 for most of this afternoon. And then the big thing that I have been trying to tell you whenever we show this graphic is the evening time frame. Just going to feel absolutely splendid. Heading out to dinner at 6 p.m. still feels like 84, so kind of the warmest that we could feel throughout today, but steadily improving. Take a look at this. If you're still out and about at 8 p.m. tonight, feels like 76 degrees, and those numbers just continue to get better and better if you have any late night plans for your Monday. So obviously anytime we can feel like the 70s is a big win, but we've been feeling like the 60s and even the upper 50s for quite some time. But I do believe that the really cool mornings are going to finally get out of the picture. We are going to see a steady warm up day by day like we were talking about last week, and that led us all the way into yesterday, but we've kind of seen a bump down in the high temperatures once again. Remember, 87 is what we hit on Sunday, and then down to 85 today. We'll hang out in the mid 80s for 2 more days, and then we'll bounce back up into those upper 80s. Satellite and radar picture is all clear besides a few scattered clouds in the state of Georgia, and it really looks like over here towards the north and the northeast, there's plenty of moisture and plenty of showers that are moving onshore along coastal areas of North Carolina up into Virginia. Plenty of scattered showers, maybe even a couple of storms back over to the west into Mississippi and Alabama. Overall, pretty quiet picture. But our setup right now is dictated by the high pressure that we see all across the southeast. So obviously you can have some rain where there are high pressure centers, but they really do a good job of drying the atmosphere out. But the main thing I want to turn your attention to is the circulation. So obviously you see the way these arrows are spinning around these blue H's, and that's going to indicate your clockwise flow. So moving in the exact same way that you see the clock move every single day. Well, over here off the Atlantic coast is this low pressure center, and you can see the arrows are moving in the opposite way. So this is the counterclockwise direction. Right now, when you have those counterclockwise winds, when you pair it up with a high pressure center and that has that clockwise rotation, you can see some air filter in from the north and the northeast. So kind of the difference between the flow of the high and low pressure centers continues to be why we have the northeasterly flow, but this is only going to last over the next 24 hours or so. Eventually, that low is going to continue to move off the Atlantic coast. These high pressure centers are going to continue to slide up to the north and the northeast. And then once we get a change in flow, that's going to really break this pattern apart that we do have currently present, and that's leading to some below average temperatures and also along with that a lot of drier air. So going through future view, the slim chance of maybe seeing a sprinkle this afternoon. This is 5 p.m. You'll see a very minuscule green dot pop up here or there. Overall, 10% to cover the bases, but really don't believe in much in the way of rain chances like we were talking about as of yesterday. Now there's plenty of rain up to the north and the northeast of us throughout today and lingering into tomorrow as well. We have some pretty good shower and storm chances up in the North Georgia mountains. So if you know anyone traveling up there, tell them to be prepared to maybe run into a brief shower, maybe even hear a couple rumbles of thunder, see some flashes of lightning. That's not your forecast down here, however. But let's go into Tuesday afternoon, where we'll start to see some upper level disturbances pass through. So that's going to kind of be like a cold front a little bit higher up into the atmosphere, not necessarily at the surface. So it may be enough of a lifting mechanism to sprout a couple of light showers throughout tomorrow. Tuesday afternoon actually looks like a fair share of we have our fair share of scattered shower chances in the forecast, maybe even some pockets where the rain is a bit steadier in nature, but that looks to pop up as we go into the evening time frame, going to have a pretty short lifespan because once the numbers start to cool down as we go into this time frame, the rain isn't going to have as much to work with as it would, say, in the middle of the afternoon. So some light showers continue to be present throughout the morning commute on Wednesday possibly, but it really doesn't get more widespread and it doesn't get heavier in nature than what you see these green colors or maybe even a flash of yellow here and there. So overall, we have some scattered light shower chances Tuesday and Wednesday. I think your rain chances are better as opposed to what we have for Monday, but it's still pretty minuscule. Anything that you see in the way of rain isn't going to amount to much, and it's still going to be so scattered and isolated in nature that you have a very good shot of dodging that rain. So the pleasant weather stretch, if it continues to roll on, your grillcast is not going to change much day by day. 6 to 8 p.m. tonight, I still think it's green spatulas. Go ahead and fire up the grill and continue that for Tuesday and Wednesday, even though we have a few shower chances because, like I said, isolated and scattered in nature. That's going to mean that whatever falls in the way of rain, very short-lived. It's not going to be a complete washout for any time of the evening time frame. You may run into a brief shower. It lasts for a couple of minutes. Then you're looking good to go. Just maybe have that grill cover on. That way you can just flip the grill cover off and then you can open up the grill and you won't have any of that pesky rainwater lingering on there to worry about and having to combat or maybe ruining any of your backyard barbecue plans. So over the next 3 days, a steady uptick in both the morning lows and the afternoon highs is in store. 85 to 86 tomorrow to 87 by the time we get to Wednesday. 58 was my low this morning. Honestly, probably undershot it a little bit because we saw some 55s, some 54s, even some 53s at some points. Well, 60, I think a lot more areas are going to be around the 60-degree mark tomorrow morning. Now, this isn't going to be everyone. You're going to have your Eastmans, you're going to have your McRae's, maybe your Dublins that pop down into the upper 50s just like they did this morning. Those areas just typically are a little bit cooler now as we get into the morning hours. 10% chance of rain rolls on through Tuesday and Wednesday, but I think the 10% is more representative of a 10% on Tuesday and Wednesday as opposed to today. Today it's more just to cover the bases. It's probably only about a 1 or a 2% chance of rain, but we like to go by increments of 10, and I like to go with a 10% even if there are a couple of blips popping up, just because some folks could see some rain. So I would rather you be prepared for at least that 10% chance as opposed to not throwing a rain chance on there and saying, oh, well, you said it wasn't going to rain today. Well, there obviously is going to continue to be a chance, but there are very minuscule chances day by day, but I think 10% really covers the bases for Tuesday and Wednesday, and whatever forms is going to be in the form of a light shower each and every afternoon. So your afternoon high temperatures are going to continue to increase, and we actually see a pretty good jump from Wednesday into Thursday because that pattern setup I was talking about. So we still have a bit of a wedge setup where those winds are coming in from the north and the northeast, and that's going to continue to try to push any of those drier surface dew points down into central Georgia. Well, as that pattern breaks apart, it's going to set up what we call a ridge, and it's kind of a similar pattern to what sets up those heat domes that we talk about so frequently in the summertime months. So it's really just going to be kind of a center of high pressure, and it's just going to lead to some warmer temperatures, and I think that's what's going to set up into Thursday and Friday. The only 2 days that I have forecasted, actually 2 of the 3 days that I have forecasted above the average high of 88 this time of year. So that average high continues to get lower and lower as we continue to kind of pair up what our numbers are like against what we typically see on average. Your morning low temperatures will continue to increase, really close to average for Thursday and Friday, but still just a little bit shy of that. And of course, there are going to be some outliers. Can't forecast one specific number for all of central Georgia because some areas do take it a little bit cooler, some areas hover a little bit warmer. But let's talk about that warm up and what the humidity levels are going to be like. Right now it looks like they're still going to remain at manageable levels all throughout the next couple of days, really the next week in time. Yes, you'll see a slight increase as we go into Thursday, maybe some dew point temperatures in the low to mid 60s. Overall, this isn't very substantial whatsoever. It's really this time of year when you have some warmer temperatures and you compare it up with dew point temperatures in the 70s, that's where it's actually going to start to feel a little bit warmer, and that's where your scattered rain chances, maybe in the form of more so scattered showers and a couple of storms. Still not worrying about that whatsoever. The humidity remains at some manageable levels over the next week. So we pick it up with the long-range models, and you will see that rain is still very hard to come by on Thursday. Rain's still very hard to come by as we go into Friday. Well, that pattern trend continues into Saturday and into Sunday, but there's lots and lots of moisture out here in the Atlantic Ocean. Will any of this try to creep inland a little bit more, maybe into central Georgia, maybe up into South Carolina, down into southern Georgia? That still remains to be seen. You'll just see a couple of scattered light green dots, maybe a couple of light blue dots, indicating that the GFS and the Euro obviously aren't resolving the best right there, but it does look like maybe a few scattered shower chances each and every day as we go into the weekend ahead. But overall, a mainly dry forecast looks to be in order. And we pick it up on Monday where it's still just kind of a scenario of spilled paint. However, you will look off here towards the east and you'll see some darker colors out here in the Atlantic Ocean. That could be indicative of maybe something tropical trying to get its act together. So that will take us into our tropics outlook. 8 a.m. on Monday. So remember, we get these updates 4 times a day when we have a potential area of development. 2 a.m., 8 a.m., 2 p.m., and then 8 p.m. each and every day. So between the 2 and the 8 a.m. update so far this morning, we saw the chance of development over the next 2 days increase from 30% up into 40%. The chance of development over the next 7 days has still remained at 80% since late yesterday, I do believe. So right now, this tropical wave does have really good chances of developing, but I think it's going to be over the next couple of days. Right now, it's still encountering a lot of drier air that is present in this portion of the tropics. And this makes sense because the last system that we had ran into this drier air a little bit closer over to the Caribbean, and it really just suppressed the development of it. I think it was up to 90% over the course of the next week. Well, then just as quick as we saw those chances pop up, those chances went down. And as that system moved into the Caribbean, it really lost its steam. But this one does look to be encountering that dry air, but it's going to run into a more favorable environment as it moves up to the north and the northwest. I think as we go past the 2-day window, so probably the later portion of this week, maybe getting into the weekend, that's when we're going to look at this system to finally get its act together. But everything that I've seen right now in the spaghetti plots does hint at a promising solution. It looks like it's going to continue up to the north and the northwest, and then it's going to kind of take that curve like Hurricane Aaron did, like Hurricane Fernand did. So hopefully we can continue to see this move back out into the Atlantic Ocean, simply be a fish storm. And if we have any boundaries that kind of move through, that's going to act as a blocking mechanism, maybe a bit of a steering mechanism, but it doesn't look like we have any big time fronts coming through like we did this time last week. So this system probably going to form into our next named storm as it stands right now. This can change in the blink of an eye, snap of fingers, but we do have a new name that we are closely monitoring, which would be Tropical Storm or Tropical Depression Gabrielle. That would be our 7th named storm of the 2025 hurricane season so far. And if you're kind of basing this year on last year, it is eerily similar in the aspect of the fact that, yes, we got a late start to last year's hurricane season. I believe around this time we already had the G name crossed. I believe Tropical Storm Gordon formed out in the Atlantic Ocean. But then we hit a bit of a lull, and about a week and a half after Tropical Storm Gordon formed, Hurricane Helene did form. So the H letter name, that happened as we got into the later portion of September. That was going into about September 24th, 25th possibly in time. So we're still kind of on schedule. Obviously, if this system gets Gabrielle and we cross Gabrielle off the list over the next couple of days, maybe into the weekend, then the next name to claim would be Umberto, which would be the H name. So we're really, really close to where we were on pace for last year. And you remember how last year got very active a little bit later in hurricane season. We already passed the official peak of hurricane season, which was last Wednesday, and we didn't have any activity down in the tropics. And it's still relatively quiet as of right now, but we can't take our eye off the ball just yet. We have to continue to monitor this all the way through hurricane season because we know some pretty strong hurricanes can happen after the official peak, like Hurricane Helene, like Hurricane Michael all time. We've had plenty of hurricanes that have formed in early October, maybe even getting into mid-October. So we could see a lot of these names crossed off as we go into the second half of hurricane season, but hopefully we'll keep our fingers crossed that it continues to remain relatively quiet as of right now. We don't see any indication of the activity firing up relatively soon, but it's something that you can never really just not monitor completely because obviously you have many potential areas of development, whether that's the Atlantic Ocean, whether that's the Gulf, or whether that's the Caribbean. And we've seen plenty of storms form in the Gulf and the Caribbean like Milton and Helene as recently as last year. but nothing to worry about as of right now, and it doesn't look like if Gabrielle does form right now it poses any impact to our forecast. So over the next 7 days, steady warming trend with your morning lows and your afternoon high temperatures. Warmest 2 days on your 7-day forecast should be Thursday and Friday, still maintaining about a 10% chance of a sprinkle or maybe a scattered light shower. Morning lows up to 64 degrees, and then right on par with average at 65 degrees by the time we roll into Saturday and Sunday. But then just as quick as we warm up, looks like those numbers go back down to 89 on Saturday, 85 on Sunday as of right now. So we'll continue to hope that, yes, those numbers can go back down below average. We can continue with the pleasant weather stretch, but we're getting into a time period where it's been a little bit too long without some rain, especially if we see some moderate drought conditions as we go into Thursday with the drought monitor release. So that's something we're going to be keeping a close eye out on for, but right now nothing substantial in the way of rain looks to be in store for the foreseeable future. Hopefully by the time we go into next week, we'll have some form of maybe a frontal system that could just bring us some widespread showers, maybe even a couple of storms. That wouldn't be the worst thing, but after you go through a really dry period, you don't want to receive too much rainfall at a short period or during a short period of time, because that can lead to a lot of loose soil getting easily saturated and result in things like some flash flooding and the ponding of water. But none of that looks to be of concern as of right now, and the drought conditions are probably going to be a little bit more of concern. So the way you can combat that, make sure you're getting home from work every single day, turning on your sprinklers, setting a timer on your sprinklers during those overnight hours when it's a little bit cooler, or just going outside, making sure that you're watering your plants, watering your backyard garden, any of those vegetable crops that you do have growing maybe in one of the garden beds in your backyard. Just want to make sure that all those plants outside are staying amply hydrated over the course of the next couple of days, really the next week here in central Georgia. And then maybe as we go into the extended forecast and we start to get an update with the drought monitor, you might have to up that maybe about 2 times a day or maybe even 3 times a day, just giving them a bit of a drink of water because they're not getting much from Mother Nature. That's going to do it for your extended forecast here today. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you back here at 10:30 once again tomorrow.